Ron, I just wanted to say thank you. It's Mara. And
Hi.
yes, I'm so happy. Let me ask you, I still have one of your piano pieces hanging in my dining room that I love so much, your piano pieces. And also, let me ask you, when you do the polymer plates, do you just using like printing polymer? You know, I don't know the right terms.
The polymer plates, my understanding, photopolymer refers to the use of light and UV sensitive polymer to create something. Okay, so solar plate and Image-On fit into that area. There are other.
No, thinking of like printing on a inkjet printer. I just use those silicone, you know, like you can buy at the shop, Photoshop.
Yeah, as a film.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use that, whatever works for your printer. I've done a lot of work over the years with sill film, but I get it in 24-inch rolls, and it fits the printer. So it's a whole different sophistication.
Yeah, no, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, you can get all kinds of different films. You just have to experiment with what works for your printer.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good to see you. Yeah, thanks.
Who else? I saw a lot of names there. Do you see
somebody said you should do a self-portrait. What's up with that?
Oh, somebody said a self-portrait. I should do a self-portrait. What's up? Okay, who said that?
From Seaview.
Yeah, okay. It was on the agenda. Marianne and I were going to be the next two to do. And, you know, the whole focus of this was to visit with the people that I hadn't been spending time with. And thus it came up with my closest friends and my family, but I'm with Marianne all the time now. So we decided it wasn't necessary. I didn't need to be looking at myself, and I didn't need to be looking at her. So we decided to let it be as it was.
Cindy Miracle asked, do you have a certain type of pencil that you like?
Cindy Miracle is asking what pencil. No, I have 3 number 2 pencils that I used. They were sharp, they were full pencils to begin with. And this was a struggle to some extent because the drawing itself turned out to be the darkest black in the drawing is a deep graphite, not really black. So to translate that to black in the Photoshop imagery was a challenge, and I had to do a lot of experimenting with getting the darkest darks to look dark enough and not fill in the darkest grays. So there's a manipulation that takes place. Take a workshop with me, I'll explain how that goes. Hi, Cindy.
Hi there, hi. I have to send you the Palomino pencils. They're so nice. They're just like butter.
Okay.
I've been having fun drawing too. It's just very it's very zen, isn't it? You know, you get
relaxing quality to it. Yes. Yeah. I even taught Charlie, our grandson, how to trace his dinosaur images on the window.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we really had that chance. So we had a good time with that as well.
Super. Yeah. Well, great to see you. And
you, dear.
Bye.
Petra said, do you have an Epson 1800?
Dawn asked if I have an Epson 1800. No, it's a 79. No, it's a 1600. It's the Photo Pro 1600. My 7890 died about 1.5 years ago, and I got this one. It works great. The key to photopolymer printmaking is you have to be able to print in black only. So some of the printers, you have to find the right media setting to be able to make a transparency in black. And that's because the black dot is much denser than the dot that's created by mixing colors. From the naked eye, you really can't see the difference, but when you put it up with a loupe on a light table, you'll see color. Okay. Yeah. I have Adam looking at the different questions.
Amy Clay asked, what kind of tool do you use to do your drawing of your trees?
What kind of tool do I use to do the drawing of the trees? Same thing, I'm working in pencil and creating, what I used to do was I would have a transparency and I would draw on the transparency with whatever medium works best for that transparency. And I found that there was nothing that I could draw with that really complements my ability to draw in the way that I can draw on paper. So David Hopman, the photographer friend, said, draw on whatever surface you want. Make your drawings the way that you want them, and then photograph them. And then once you photograph it, rather than having to deal with trying to figure out what the values are on a transparency, you can dictate those values on a computer program through Photoshop. So now I photograph my drawing, put it into Photoshop, and then I can manipulate it so much that I can get my darks to go in the right place and all the tones to be right, so that my printed image in the end looks more closely like the drawing rather than filling in. So that doesn't quite answer your question. The pencil that I use is just a plain old number 2 pencil, sometimes charcoal pencils, depends what mood I'm in. But it's drawing on paper to make a drawing. And if it works out well and I want to make multiples of it, then I move to photographing it and have all kinds of flexibility.
Holland had a question. She may want to ask it directly.
Holland, you had a question? Are you still there? Hi. Oh, you're still muted. Yeah. Are you muted? I can't hear you.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Oh, now I can.
Oh, okay. I was wondering how you know with your abstract pieces when you're done, because that's what I've always struggled with, abstract pieces.
That's good.
Knowing what's too much and what's too little.
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, it's usually done before I want it to be, right? It's usually done before I want it to be. And the answer is, it's not about me. It's about the piece. You have to be able to separate yourself from your expectations and your plan so that the piece can give you its information without your censoring it. So you have to be open to the conversation that occurs between the piece and yourself. So you're working on something and you have this idea of where you want to take it, and the piece is saying, don't go there. You got to be able to listen to that. And when the piece says, leave me alone, that's when it's done. You may not be ready for it to be done. And you have other ideas. You have wants and desires. You got to give them up, because the piece is more important than anything that you can add to it. Now, that's a subtle place to be, but you have to be able to get into that space of being able to receive the information from the piece without bringing your ideas to it at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I teach, I describe this as raising children. You bring a child into the world, and every need that they have immediately is coming from you. And then after a while, you learn to understand their needs, and you give up your needs for the needs of the child. And when a child grows up, starts talking back, it says, I know, I want to go here. And the strong, overbearing parent says, no, I'm your parent. I tell you, you must do this. And you fight with your child. Well, you do that with your art too. If the art wants to go in a direction and you have ideas for it, and it doesn't jive with what the art wants, you're going to fight with it. It's all part of that process. So give yourself up to allowing the piece to tell you where it needs to go, and then it'll tell you when it's done.
Neat. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Mary Helen Horn said, will those dinosaurs show up in future work?
Will the dinosaurs show up in future work? That's great. Yeah, I think so. I have a piece in the works right now, which is Charlie's basketball hoop and drawings from Ryan and Adam when they were kids. So who knows? Yes.
I hope so, Ron. I think some of your, like the remedy for meanness, boy, does that resonate for the last couple of weeks, especially.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the other work you've done. I love the idea of the dinosaurs maybe traipsing across your work.
When I was in California with Nikki and Ryan and Charlie and James, I was asking them if they had any paper, some images, maybe even some fabric that had dinosaurs on them, so I can make a dinosaur mask for Charlie. And I forgot to take it with me when we returned home, and decided to just forego that and go with the white mask. But maybe that's something in the future. Thanks. Good to see you.
Two questions about materials.
Materials. Two questions about materials. Adam's.
Leslie Paul Cosbow said, do you ever use Caran d'Ache pencils watercolor?
Caran d'Ache pencils are great. I use Caran d'Ache usually on top of my images to finish them. They draw beautifully on top of the printed ink, and occasionally, I won't compose with them. I'll use them as color marks or to curate. They're also decent to work on a plate and then use release agent to transfer them. But they're a little finicky depending on the age and the pressure that you use. Sometimes it doesn't come out that well. My idea is if you want it to sit on top, don't try to print it, just draw it. Draw it on top. Yeah.
Pat Pitcher said,
Yes.
Ron, do you ever use oil pastel on the transparency?
Pat, how you doing? I'm going to see you here in a few days. I don't use oil pastel. I could do that on a transparency. There's no saying that I won't do it. In fact, I have a transparency that I use to make a graffiti mark with spray paint. I spray painted on a transparency and made a plate from that. Or I can spray paint or use any type of technique on transparency and then put it on top of a finished or a piece that's coming to finishing as a way to see how that might work. So the transparency becomes a temporary surface that you can try things out before you commit to the actual surface that's going to receive the color.
Millie Price asks, what papers do you use?
I'm working almost exclusively on Arches 88 paper. Can you hear Adam's questions? Yeah, good. Arches 88 is the paper that I ultimately print on. I print dry with Akua Intaglio inks, both with the Intaglio images as well as with Monotype. And I get great results. This way I don't have to keep resoaking the paper and so on. Occasionally I'll use a piece of Chincolet paper like Reeves Reeves Lightweight, has a buff color, and have that as an underpainting. But that gets collaged to the backing paper most of the time, Arches 88. Okay.
There's a question from Annette Fort. She just completed a series of Monotype monoprints and trying to remember which it is. Same plate, different colors and collage techniques. Which is it?
Same plate meaning intaglio. You don't use the word intaglio or anything that's repeatable in your description there. So the concept of monoprint, as far as I'm concerned, relates to the ability to do it again, to coming from a surface that has the ability to create multiples. So all of these, if I change the colors on all of these and I did different backgrounds, all of these would be monoprints. Right now, they're all additionable pieces because both the background, all three, the background, the portrait image, and the mask are all repeatable. And in that way, I could do an addition. But suppose I did different colors in the background, and each one had a unique color in the background with Monotype. Then I would call every one of them a monoprint, because the ability to make multiples is halted and made unique by the handling of that background in one of the images. The next one, I use the same matrix and do a different background. It's also a monoprint or a variable addition, depending on my intention.
Thank you, Ron. Nice to see you.
Good. Hi, Annette. So Adam's reading questions. Do people want to read their own questions? They'll have
Cornelia.
Cornelia, yes.
As one.
You're struggling using brushes to apply ink. Sometimes you don't want to use brayers. What brushes would you recommend? So great to see you. Good to see you too. I don't see you there though. You can unmute yourself, Cornelia.
Yeah, I'm right here. Hey,
Oh,
Rob.
hi. Hi, how's it going in your new
Great.
studio?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I don't recommend brushes at all. I
Okay.
mean, I have lots of them. I don't know what the hell I'm using. They're all funky. I never have a favorite brush because I destroy them no matter what I do. So I can't really, I'm not a painter. I paint with the brushes I have. I don't go out, I never go out and buy brushes. I use the brushes that are left here by students. Doesn't matter to me. If it's the right size, it works. So my attention to that kind of detail is not relevant to your question, perhaps. But I do use specific brayers. The brayers are very important, different size brayers to make marks. I do more of my mark making and my image making with brayers than I do with brushes.
Yeah. And what's the smallest brayer type? Is it
Package makes a really tiny one. I think I have a 1/4 inch brayer right here.
Okay. Oh yeah.
All right,
Okay.
that's really small.
That's
It's like a striper. They're very expensive, but they work great. You can get a whole set from Tackage. In fact, I was going to wear my Tackage t-shirt, most of them, because they're my favorite supplier. But Marianne said, "Aren't you dressing for an opening?" So I put the black shirt on. Thank you for your question. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
What else?
I think that's it for questions.
That's it
that
for
were
questions.
sent. If there's any others. One person did ask, had you ever printed on fabric before?
Yes. One of my earliest prints in college was a piece called And to Dream. And it represented a figure sleeping on a pillow, dreaming, and there's flowers going by and a color background. And I printed it on a piece of muslin, and just to try it. So yes, I have. And I've done it quite a bit in different situations. But I never decide to do that. It always happens at the moment. You know, I don't say, I'm going to do this series on fabric, or I'm going to use this fabric for this project. It never happens like that. I'm in a project, and all of a sudden, I say, I need something, and the fabric works, and that's when I'll print on it. That's what happened with the masks. Yeah.
Ron, that was me who asked the question, and I was just wondering if you had to do anything special. I mean, muslin, I've worked with muslin, and it's a good, you know, kind of rough cloth, but it doesn't, there's not a lot of sizing to it. There's not a lot of stiffness to it. So do you do anything to it to make sure it doesn't just blotch up?
No, I don't get that fussy. I'm going to show you something though. I have two portraits right here. One of David is under there. And okay, yeah. These two portraits were done, this was done when I first started the series. This is David's portrait on muslin. And it's got a wide weave to it, and the detail is not as crisp as this, which was done on the cotton sheet. So, you know, you try things and see what works and what doesn't. The imagery of those birds worked very well early on because it's a very thin, tight fiber, and it was a great chincolle element. So that worked until I photographed it and made it into an image that I could print onto paper. But this was the direction I was going to go in initially when I did the first proofs of the masks. And it didn't quite hold up like this one. You can see if I put this on top of there, how much more detail there is.
Well, it's probably good because the CDC doesn't recommend muslin for masks.
That's great.
Thanks, Ron.
You're welcome.
Ron, it's Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. How's
Hi.
it in Hawaii?
I'm actually in LA right now,
Oh, okay.
but it's great in Hawaii. It was great to stay home there. I mean, you don't really have to stay home when you're there. Someone was asking about applying with the brushes on the plate, and I agree. It doesn't seem to be work. But what about, have you ever tried to put the ink in a bottle and spray it?
Yeah, I did.
Has that ever
to
been
make a
successful?
graffiti-like look. You got to thin it out. The problem with thinning the ink out enough to make it run and spray is that it loses its opacity.
Yeah.
And if you make it thick enough to keep the opacity, it pushes when it goes through the press. So making spray type things in a printmaking way becomes a little dicey. You'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, I was thinking about airbrushing on a,
Yeah.
graffiti. Yeah, like an airbrush, but maybe adding something that would keep it wet longer. Like I don't know. I was just curious if you ever tried it, but
No, I haven't. I'm
there's
pretty
so many
good with
options.
using a toothbrush and just doing this.
That's nice.
and
Yeah,
spritzing.
and then putting a stencil down to get it. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
One of
I
the
just get seduced by the brayer. And my problem is it's like the brayer is like and it kind of directs me sometimes into a grid that I really want to get beyond. But with the action of the brayer, you're like,
Well, you're caught up in the fact that it is a brayer. If you think of it as a drawing tool, then you'll make marks that don't usually come from a brayer. Like I draw with the edge of the brayer.
Right.
And I scuff with the brayer to make these marks that I can't do with a brush or with a pencil. But they're not the kind of marks that you usually think of using a brayer for. Yeah. I hear you.
I guess I want to be you, Ron.
You want to be me?
I want to be you.
You're doing pretty well being yourself.
But I'm being Carrie, so that's enough. So good to see everybody.
You too. Thanks. What were you saying?
There's a few more questions there. The question about the Lightbox. What Lightbox would you recommend?
Okay. Who asked about the Lightbox?
Cornelia.
Yep.
I have a Lightbox that was made, homemade box that was made for a project 30 years ago when I worked with an artist. It's just fluorescent lights inside of a box with holes to let the air in, and it's lined in aluminum foil, and it's got a translucent sheet on top with glass, and it works great, but it's not bright enough to do, if you can do this. Can you show Dan's portrait now?
Sure.
I'm going to have Adam shoot that portrait here in a second. He's going to, the light that comes through the room from the outside is a lot brighter than the light I could get on my Lightbox. So I don't know about brands of light boxes. I just built one.
Here's the portrait.
It's the portrait of Dan with the light coming through. Now, if you open the door, you could probably see the drawing without the background, and go maybe to the other side.
The other side?
Yeah. And there's the transparency. Yeah.
Did that work?
This isn't necessarily a way that I work. It's a way that I solve the problem of having to get the likenesses and to do these more quickly than spending many, many hours on each portrait to make them right without, I'm still working from a photograph, So I guess I'm justifying my use of the photograph as a reference, but hey, that's the life, that's the time we're in. So.
Do you apply the image on film onto plexiglass?
Do I apply the image on film onto plexiglass? It's not plexiglass. Who asked that question? That was
from Leocadia.
Leocadia. Hi.
How are you?
Are you on? Hi, good to see you. Good. I use PETG as the substrate for the image on
Mhm.
and laminate it with water.
Mhm.
And that's the same surface that I use for Monotype. The
Mhm.
nice thing about the PETG is that it's soft, somewhat, it gives a little bit. So when you run it through the press, you can give it quite a bit of pressure and it will help push the ink out as opposed to trying to get the paper down in when you have like in a solar plate where there's a harder surface. So yeah, I use the PETG to laminate.
We're going to have to come out and I'll take a class in image on with you.
Sounds good. I'll look forward to that.